Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing the Broadway Melody from 1929. And before I get started, you'll notice I'm not my normal setup here. I'm on vacation, well, not vacation, on a work trip. So you'll notice that I'll have different backdrop here, and some of the episodes throughout this season, you'll notice this as well. You'll also notice they have the Turner Classic Channel, and I've been playing that in my off time from work. So, anyways, let's get into this film, The Broadway Melody. So, some essential movie details. There was a silent version of this film, as most theaters didn't have sound capability. And you could tell because there's some scenes that are split up with a title card kind of explaining what's happening next, very similar to what would happen in silent films. And another detail, some of the characters' names are based off of real people and kind of a spoof of them, such as Frances Zanfield in this film is a spoof of Florence Ziegfeld. And then the character of Jock Warner is for sure a spoof of Jack Warner. I thought that was pretty funny and pretty interesting as well. And Warner Brothers was actually a rival of MGM who made this film at the time. So, anyways, I thought those are interesting behind the scenes details. Now let's get into my thoughts on the plot. So, the plot, I give it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was just an okay plot. I liked the rivalry between the sisters, but I wasn't a fan of how the story ends with Eddie, who's Harriet's lover. He ends up with Queenie, and I just don't think that should have been the case. I don't think he should have ended up with her. I think a much better story would have been Queenie learned she hasn't found her lover yet, and then Eddie learns to appreciate what he's already got. I think that's a much better arc overall. Excuse me. And I don't think it should have ended that way because if you think about it, Harriet gets kind of the short end of the stick. She loses her lover, she loses her stage manager, or stage partner rather, and all of it is her sister. And I don't know, I wasn't a fan of that ending. I don't think it should have ended that way. So, anyways, those are my thoughts and reasons why I gave the plot a 3 out of 5. Let's move on to the acting. So, the acting, I also give it a 3 out of 5. I thought for the most part it was pretty cheesy. Anita Page as Queenie was kind of the cheesiest for me, which is unfortunate because she was known as a great actress at the time. And there were some moments she was great, but there were other ones where she's over the top, especially when she's with Jock Warner. Again, obvious riff of Jack Warner. I don't know. She was just a little too cheesy, and I kind of noticed she had a bit of an accent sometimes, and I'm kind of losing my voice. Sorry, guys, but sometimes she had an accent, sometimes she didn't. It was not very consistent, and I wasn't a fan of that. All right, Bessie Love as Harriet or Hank. I thought she was a much better actress. Her best scene is when she's crying after Eddie leaves to go save Queenie because she knows Eddie actually likes her more. And he was very realistic and probably the best acting of the film. But it wasn't enough to save it for me. And then Charles King, who plays Eddie, he was a little too cheesy for me. I don't like his acting very much. And I also hate story-wise he ends up with Queenie. It just doesn't sit well with me. And so that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. All right, let's move on to directing. I gave it a 3.5. I think for the most part, it's good. Like, I love the stage scenes. I love the backdrops and set pieces and whatnot. That's probably the best part of the movie for me. But when it came to the more serious dramatic, a little too over the top, a little too cheesy for me, and I didn't think it was good. Just looking at his filmography here, he did a lot of musicals. I'd like to check out some of these other ones. So, anyways, I thought he just did okay, not great. All right, let's move on to cinematography and special effects. I give it a 4. I really liked it, especially the camera work. I thought it was great, especially in the scenes where they have these really cool set pieces. Like, one of my favorites was was it like a Noah's Ark? It was like a big boat, not Noah's Ark. I think it was a Roman centurion boat or something like that, or a Viking boat. I couldn't really tell, but I thought that was cool. I like that set piece, very elaborate, and I thought the costumes were great too. Um, there's also another one where there's like a wedding at the end of it, and I thought that was a pretty interesting set piece and costumes and whatnot. Overall, it was a really well put together film. But the scenes outside of the theater, I think, are a little bit more average. That's why this isn't a 5 out of 5, because the only set piece that really wowed me is not used very much, and it's not really fundamental to the story. I think a much better one, or a much more elaborate, like I'm thinking of Singing in the Rain, for example, has very elaborate set pieces. This one, not so much, but that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. All right, let's move on to the music. Being that this is a musical, there's music throughout it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I actually liked it. I thought many of the musical numbers were great and fun. Um, the music itself was fine. There was only one song I didn't love, and that was where Eddie was singing to Queenie. Not necessarily the song itself. I thought that was fine, and it's played later on a on an orchestra. I thought that was fine. I just didn't like his singing voice, Eddie's singing voice. I didn't think it was that good. And so, anyways, other than that, though, I thought it was a great overall musical. All right. That's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. All right. Let's go to the overall score. Okay. So, overall, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. And that makes my critic list percentage is 70%. So, let me break down my score for that. There's no graphic language. Violence, there's some fighting, but it's very tame. There's no blood or anything like that. Nudity and sexual content. I will say many of the costumes are a bit more risque, especially considering it's a film from 1929. This is for sure a pre-code film. There's also a scene where a character is nude in a bathtub, but we don't see anything. It's obscured. And again, as much as I say all this, it's still very tame, especially for today's standards. But it's definitely more than I would expect from a film from 1929. This is definitely before the Hays Code, for sure. Right, political bias, none. Family friendly, I would say for the most part, but yeah, I would say for the most part. But if you need a little bit more insight, check out the nudity sexual content portion of my review. Okay, entertainment value. I think the drama between the two sisters was interesting. Just didn't like how it ends up. And it's not super fun. The best part, for sure, entertainment wise, were the musical numbers and the music itself, I think was great. And so, overall, would I recommend this movie? I think more so just for curiosity reasons. This is a Best Picture winner. This is the second Best Picture and the first sound film to win. So, outside of that, just an okay average movie. If you want to see musicals from this era, I would say check out more of the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, or later on with like Wizard of Oz. I think those musicals better represent the 30s. There's a couple more I'd like to see, like Footlight Parade and 42nd Street, a couple other ones. This one to me does not represent what you hear about and what you see with the 1930s musicals from MGM. Of course, this is from 29, but this is like the one that leads to the 1930s musicals. So I guess only if you're a fan already of old movies and you want to see or you want to see all the Best Picture winners. That's pretty much it. I don't think general audiences would appreciate it as much. All right, well, those are my thoughts on the Broadway Melody from 1929, and that concludes today's movie review.